Welcome back to Meet Bridget, a show that sheds light on the often untold teenage and young adult stories of successful women from all types of backgrounds and in all sorts of careers. This show is one of the first babies that Asha and I have ever had. It's an extension of our confidence coaching service for young women. I'm Kashia Rosenberg, and I co-host this show alongside my best friend and Meet Bridget founder and CEO, Asha Gabriel. This is season 4 of Meet Bridget, which has been so incredible. This is actually our final episode of season 4. We wanted to close in true bestie fashion and have an episode where we sat down together, got a little reflective, answered some questions, shared our thoughts, and just really celebrated everything that we've accomplished so far through a partner episode. We've been so lucky to host so many successful, articulate, diverse women who, share their individual pathways to success, and they've gifted our audience with their personal lessons of vulnerability and transparency and all of their valuable lessons and takeaways. And so we wanted to take time to sit down and join that class of women and share some of our valuable lessons and takeaways from this season.
Welcome, everybody. What was so cool about this season was I feel that many of you know that we also released our first course this season. We did a few in-person events. In the process of recording and releasing this season, we found ourselves really having to walk our talk. When we were putting together our course, honestly, I hope you know that Kashia and I truly, we each went through the whole process of the course, and I felt strengthened by it in ways that I didn't even really expect to. But it was so well timed because I feel like we put together the course, which, if you're not familiar, it's called Define Confidence. It's a 5-session course really about taking an inventory internally of your foundations for confidence, giving yourself a toolbox to return to when, life gets tough and you want to find that solid ground. And for both of us this season, we take pride in doing long seasons. And we talked about what kind of podcast we wanted to be. We were like, you know what? I don't want to release like 10 episodes and call it a season. I want to give our listeners a lot. I want them to feel like there is abundance in this community. So each one of our seasons is 30 episodes long. But what that means for Kashia and I is that we hit the ground running and we release episodes every week. So as this season kept going, and that also means that, if it's every week, that each season is going to be, multiple months long. And as the season started going, Kashia and I both ran into, our lives. We both have, young children and busy families and working lives. Both of us ran into, a little intensity, a little extra, stuff to push through, unexpected circumstances and things. But we were just talking about how intentional it felt that we spent a lot of time this season reflecting on the frameworks that are there to help you for these exact situations. So really, the season kept going, the interviews kept happening, we kept being able to return to each other and this cause and mission because the framework was set up for success. And then we were able to adapt and pivot when we needed to because we had the tools set up to do so. So we wanted to talk to our audience in this episode really about the importance of that framework and the experience that we both had of having it being tested.
It was a wild year, to put it mildly, I think, for both of us. And I think a lot of people felt that way. I think, the world's a crazy place. Information flows so quickly. We are at this incredible crossroads, I think, in human history where we're experiencing, our technological revolution, where everyone that we speak to is a digital native. No one's, the young girls that we coach have not lived in a universe or in a world where they didn't have immediate access to information or to what their peers were doing or to constant communication by text, phone call, FaceTime, video, Instagram, Facebook. Like, your community is there at your fingertips. It can be isolating and it can be overwhelming. I think this year in particular, it's so impressive that we were able to maintain the cadence of an episode a week for more than 2/3 of the year, despite all of that chaos that this world brings, right? And then so you layer on top of that motherhood and being a daughter that's very invested in the health and well being of our individual families, being wives, working. Um, it gets very chaotic. And I think one of the things that Asha and I often reflect about is, how proud we are that we're able to maintain this and to continue returning to this joint cause and to this business and to our listeners and to all of the girls that we coach and mentor. It's really important, meaningful work for us, but it does cause us to sit down and consistently say, how are we making this work? What are the things that we practice that actually create the consistency and the success and the foundation underneath all of that without burning out and without losing our minds and without being cruel to ourselves or not giving ourselves the space to really still have time for, still have that quiet time for each person. So I feel like a lot of themes have arisen this season, and a lot of our guests have been able to speak to them. I mean, we've had more interviews in this season than we've ever had before. I think of our 30 episodes, what is it like? We've had 25 to 27 interviews,
Yeah, and
which is,
it's really a testament to their community. I feel like,
yeah,
we got the feedback that people love the interviews. They want to hear the stories. And we feel so grateful that, like, with each season, I feel like our own, the referrals for interviews, the interest in interviews, it just has been growing and growing.
yeah.
And we just feel so honored to be able to be a platform for that transparency and that trust in us to share those teenage stories.
It's been incredible. So, some of the themes that arose this season, we were talking about it. I think we sort of started going into this, but how quickly life moves, right? Things get really, really fast moving. And I think we likened this season of the podcast, the season of life, to being sort of like a river. Rivers are fast moving, but they're also a source of sustenance, like most communities, back in the day before we had water treatment plants
No,
and
back to
technology.
remember
I mean,
Mesopotamia.
yeah, rivers were like the source of abundance, right? And so we really tried to like just look at everything that we're going through rather than looking at it as what it felt like, a source of challenges, a source of stress and anxiety. When life starts moving really quickly, the initial emotions that arise are, at least for me, anxiety, fear, and stress, because I want to quickly get a handle of the situation. I feel anxious that things feel like frenetic and out of my control, and it's scary. It's scary being in that position because when you're thrust into an unpredictable set of circumstances or something that's really fast moving, like jumping into a fast moving river, I think your initial reaction is to sort of freeze up and be like, okay, how do I control this? How do I get through this? I'm never going to make it. And then how do you
Yeah,
refashion
like
that
reintegrate.
set of initial emotions? So I think that's something that we consistently looked at. And, you're met with those initial feelings. How do you normally feel when life starts getting crazy, Osh? Like,
I think one thing that I've realized as I've gotten a little older, especially into my 30s, is that life comes in seasons. And
mhm.
what's the play on words, because this is literally the close of our fourth seasons. There are four seasons. And, we had this feeling of like the river of how when like life will just speed up and sometimes you feel like, you're just chilling or you're in a dry spell and you're bored and or like the winter, or like everything's
Mhm.
frozen. Nothing's really people are like, "Hey, what are you up to?" And it's like, I don't know, like you have some seasons where you're sort of just like, I'm hibernating, man. Like I'm just
Yeah.
like nothing's really changed. I'm just like plug and play doing the things. And then
Mhm.
there are other seasons where it's like, the glacier melts and suddenly like the river starts flowing and then it picks up and then you're like, what happened? Because now I'm like literally on the Rocky Rapids, like, going over the stumps and
Okay.
like I don't know
Nice.
which way the river's going to turn next and it can feel kind of chaotic, but I kind of feel like in the seasons of rest, it's such a wonderful opportunity to dig deep and do that inner work, knowing that it's probably not going to stay like this for a while. So
Mhm.
it's the routines that you put into place, the tools that you work through and establish for yourself when things do speed up a little bit, that's really when they're tested. So that when, the seasons change and the river is flowing, you're not so concerned, like, how do I control which turn is next or whatever? It's like, no, like I've been through this season before. I'll go through something like this again,
Mhm.
and this amazing fast flowing water is actually like I am built for this. Like the land is built for the water to flow through every year and it's going to create life. It might cut through a new canyon and take me somewhere I've never been before. And like I'm built for this. I can handle it because I know how to return to myself when things slow down a little bit.
Yeah.
Just to really take that analogy all the way home. We love an
Entire
analogy.
communities were built on the banks of
Yes.
rivers. Look at Egypt. Look at Cairo and Alexandria, which is, well, a foregone city, but the most abundant, successful cities known to mankind were built at the banks of rivers for that reason. And I think when you take that analogy, the really beautiful thing is like these fast moving moments of life, this chaos, this craziness, this is where the best parts of ourselves are formed. The best routines can be extracted, the best foundations can be laid because you get the gift of retrospect where you look at everything that you've been through, everything that's coming, and you get to say, like, these are the things that enabled me to stay afloat, that enabled me to navigate, that enabled me to pivot along this rapid river. And then you build your community, you build your foundation off of those things. And I think it's really cool. Now that we are in our 30s, which it's really cool to be able to experience all of these different parts of life with you, Asha, and with this community that we're building. But as we enter this season and as we settle into this season, we've been able to look back at other really difficult moments in our lives and be very intentional about the lessons that we've extracted. Can you share with our audience a moment in your life which felt similar to this? This season of just having unpredictable things happen, or, a season where life required a lot from you. You required a lot from yourself, your family, others look to you for a lot of different things. Do you have any examples from maybe your younger years where you were tested and the things that you did to be successful in those moments and the lessons that you learned from some of those moments?
I mean, what immediately comes to mind for me was in my early 20s when we started Meet Bridget as a community. Honestly, it was born out of a feeling of unrest. I was working a finance job that really wasn't right for me. So something in me was speaking to, even though I didn't have the courage to shift jobs yet, I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll just start testing these ideas and this mission that's growing inside of me. And I feel like in that moment, just to at least start something and start playing with something, I feel like was such a healing moment, just to get out of what I felt like was sort of momentum in the wrong direction for me in a lot of ways. But then from the point of starting Meet Bridget when I was in that job and looking for something different to also the moments when this this company and its existence was tested. So, many of you know, like I worked for Alo Yoga and had an amazing experience working there. But when I received a scholarship to go get my MBA at USC for basically a full ride scholarship because of our work with Meet Bridget, I really had to sit and look in the mirror. And I had some people telling me that, like, oh, you shouldn't leave your job at Aloe because it's every girl's dream and everyone wants to have that job and you'll regret it or whatever, kind of certain perspectives within the company telling me that, but then also this inner compass that I had to keep returning to. And I'm like, you know what? The world is wide and this thing is part of my heart. Like, my heart is with Meet Bridget, even though I was loving my job and my team and what I was doing. Like, I have to keep returning to this thing that's on my heart. And I feel like this opportunity for business school has been placed there for a reason. And then once
Mhm.
more, so Kashia has obviously been my friend through a lot of highs and lows. But when I had my thyroid cancer diagnosis and surgeries and radiation, we had a big event planned with Microsoft that we had already had a lot of momentum, signups, things were already in motion when I found out about my cancer and knew I was going to have to be going through treatment and everything. And that was another testing moment where it was like, okay, being able to return to what I know to be true. And then also the framework that I've built about what I know around what I know to be true, which was my team, which was, the organization around the events and how we're going to make them happen. I felt like even though my river had taken a crazy turn and it was moving a lot faster than I thought it would be at that moment, with the cancer diagnosis and everything, being able to look to my team and how they instill the confidence in me that's like, no, we got this. It's already set up. Like, let's do this event. Like, we're ready. I think that was really a moment that stuck with me about like the strength of this community and what we're building is that we're building the resilience to be in those moments and keep moving forward and knowing in your heart the things that are very important to you, which for me and for Kishia, Meet Bridge has been a huge part of that. What about you, Keish? Do you have a moment, a story where it's like you really had to dig in while the river was flowing?
Yeah, so many. Um, but I think that one of the things that I've been reflecting on recently, especially now because I'm my 35th, our 35th is coming up, and it's a bit of a milestone birthday, and I've spent the last 10 plus years not just building Bridget, but also building very successful healthcare companies. And a lot of our longtime listeners know that I started out my career as a nurse working in the hospital. Before that, I was in nursing school. I did my undergrad program in tandem with a bachelor's nursing program. And at the time, it was like, I don't know, Guinness rated it like the most difficult bachelor's to get just because of the number of qualifying exams you had to take. Like every semester, every course had at least four different intense examinations that you had to take and pass, especially for the state of California. So it was, one part university college experience and one part like really getting prepared for this career that you're setting yourself up for. And at the same time, I had become estranged from my biological father, and my grandfather was passing away. He was sick with cancer, and it was a really tumultuous time for me. And I was just entering adulthood at that point. It was, 19, I was 19, 20, and I started to feel really dispassionate and lost, I think is the best way to say it, because all of these big life shifts were happening and it was really challenging the daily routine of going to school and figuring out, why it was still important for me to be in school when everything else felt like it was very chaotic and difficult outside of school. And there were moments where I, failed tests or failed courses because I was so consumed by the anxiety and the emotional effect of just everything that was happening. And I questioned to myself and then to my parents, is this the right thing for me? Am I taking joy out of this? Is this the career that I want to have forever? And I remember at that age feeling like going to school and setting out on a path meant this is what you were going to do for the rest of your life. There's no takebacks. I wasn't so aware that like people have careers and they have second careers or that those careers shift courses. It was like, okay, am I going to be a nurse in the hospital for forever? And is this what I'm going to do? And I almost quit. And I I almost gave up a couple times. And ultimately, of course, we know I ended up finishing my degree and going on to establish this career, and all of these other things have happened. But I've been very reflective about this because life comes at you hard and fast, and there are things that happen that are unexpected. And I am really excited about what's to come. I'm excited about all the possibilities. I'm also really grateful for everything that has happened, including those periods of immense self doubt and intense, I don't know what I'm going to do with my future. Just that feeling of being young and feeling like you have to have it all figured out, I think really smacks of what girls go through now still. I need to create a personal brand. I need to be really polished on the internet. I need to know exactly what I want to do. And Asha and I were talking, and, I could have made a bunch of different decisions at that time of my life. I could have quit, and that would have been okay. I would have figured it out. I think, I believe I would
You
have
have.
figured it out. But it also would have meant that my life now would have looked so different. I don't think we would have Bridget. I don't think that I would have developed different healthcare companies or found different pathways or learned how to be creative with figuring out what I wanted to do. And so I'm really grateful for that period of I don't know because it led to this period of abundance. So much so that sometimes I can feel like I'm drowning in it. I can feel like I don't know what to do with all of it. But I think what ultimately the beauty of this is that at that time, I'm happy I made the decision I did to stick with my program and remain accountable for the choice to be in school, because having, on the one hand, all of this chaos that led to these feelings of unsureness and tumult also allowed me to kind of surrender to it and say it's okay to have an area of my life where I stick to the routine. And having that routine actually was like a lifesaver. So even though it didn't necessarily feel like this is the dream of all dreams, being able to say, okay, today, just for the day, I'm going to wake up, I'm going to go to class, and I'm just going to learn what I can learn and figure it out. And maybe the answer will arise out of all of this. And that feels like a really simple thing. But honestly, that tool is something that I still use today. Like, yeah, perhaps I don't know what the outcome is going to be. Perhaps today I don't have that huge spark of inspiration where I'm like, this is the creative wild dream, but I do have a structure that I can hang on to or keep moving through and rely on and create that consistency for myself so that I'm ready when that inspiration does strike, and I can keep going and I don't have to feel paralyzed by the anxiety, fear, or stress that life brings at me. Sometimes it's okay to not know and to just put one foot in front of the other or climb the ladder one rung at a time. And just that's okay.
Okay. Yeah. So with all of this in mind, Kashia and I thought it would be really a fun time to address some questions that people have submitted over the course of the season and the course, um, and really connect to those questions, because I think what makes this community so special to us is that we're not on a pedestal trying to just teach young women how to be. We are learning with you and experiencing, the world around us with you. And we're here not just to give you like a 10-step program that you have to implement and we're like off here in the distance, making money off of you or anything like this. Like we're here using our own vulnerability and our own experience as our guides. And we wanted to just dive into some questions and hopefully our answers can be helpful. So, Kashia, I'd love for you to maybe jump in on this one. A listener asked, how can I be more confident speaking up in class without worrying about what other people think? I want to participate more in class discussions, but I'm always scared that I'll say something wrong or that people will judge me. How can I get over this fear?
Mm. So I think this is such a great question because I think about how I felt in school, which was I definitely had moments like this where you're afraid or unsure of the answer and you want to participate. I think that in those moments, which can also be translated into social settings and on social media, which I think we should talk more about. One of the things that I employ is firstly, I take a deep breath. You're already thinking about your answer, you're thinking about the thing you want to say. And then it's that kind of like niggling self doubt sitting on your shoulder that says, is that the right thing? Should you say that? And to that voice, I say, let me say it anyways. Because the more times you fail and feel silly, the more times you get answers wrong, I think it desensitizes you to that fear. So that's the first thing is like, we're all going to have the wrong answer sometimes. And I think just reminding yourself of that, reminding yourself it's okay if the answer is wrong or if I say something silly, because everyone's going to do that. It's a universal experience of human existence. Like if we were right all the time, then there wouldn't be, trial and error. There wouldn't be science experiments. Like there wouldn't be these amazing discoveries because everything takes that bit of failure. And I feel like the failure, the not knowing, that's like the 9 times out of 10. That's like the practice for stepping up to the bat so that, you get that one perfect pitch and you actually hit it. You're like, yeah, this is what it feels like because everything else has been practice and exercising the muscle leading up to it. So I think when you feel afraid to utilize your voice, telling yourself like this is part of the routine. This is part of being human. This is part of sharing what I know is one great way of just reminding yourself that it's okay. It's okay to speak up and to utilize your voice because using your voice is the muscle that you're strengthening. The voice is the muscle. The answers, whether they're right or wrong, like
I should say
sometimes
that.
they'll be right, sometimes they'll be wrong, and that's okay. It's making sure that you're using your voice so that you get the opportunities to be right sometimes.
Well, I think
And
also
that
like they're remembering that by you speaking up, you could also be inspiring someone else and have no idea that someone else wished that someone would ask this question. So the odds are that if you have a question you want to ask or an answer you think might be right, like 9 times out of 10, there's another person in that classroom, that setting, that presentation, that might be thinking the same thing or might be nervous to speak up, but when they hear you, you could be setting off this whole chain reaction. So thinking that it's not just about you and whether you're right or wrong, but that you're bettering the entire experience of everyone in the class by being vulnerable.
yeah, I absolutely agree. Here's another great question. How can I handle criticism, whether it's internal, like self doubt, or external, like somebody else judging me, without letting it crush my confidence?
So this question hits hard for me because I'm a person that has really had to go through a journey of like what is criticism and like how how deeply can I let criticism sit with me? I'm a person that um when I was very young, I'm just a very sensitive person. I think at this point probably a lot of our listeners know that, but I've always been a sensitive person. And what that meant for me when I was younger was that any bit of criticism I would internalize. And the internal criticism really was there. Um, and I didn't really have a filter for like whether or not it would apply to me or was valid. I just absorbed everything. And what that creates is anxiety, a lack of an internal compass, and really kind of a distorted sense of self worth. Um, so, what I would tell this listener is that when you're receiving criticism, the first thing that you should do is examine the source. Because if that person that's, say, it's an external form of criticism and someone has come to you and sat you down and just said something that's hard to hear, but if you look at the person, say maybe this is a coach or a parent or a best friend that has come to you and given you feedback that may or may not be completely right. But if you look at the person and you can say, oh, but this is a person who wants me to succeed. Obviously, my coach wants me to be the best player I can be. Um, or a parent, like this is a person that loves me and wants me to succeed and be happy. When you qualify that source of the criticism first, you could realize that maybe it was actually really hard to for that person to give me this piece of criticism. So it's not just me that's having, a high stakes moment here. The person, it's hard to give constructive criticism to someone too. That can help you process the information and realize that this might be hard to hear, but it's also something that's being given for my benefit and my growth. The other type of criticism can be from someone you don't even know. Like I connect to this in my modeling career. I really had to learn that, I'm going out for these auditions, strangers that I'd never met. And even if I really want this opportunity and I might think that it's right for me and I'm right for it, in reality, in a lot of different situations, whether it's an audition for something or even a job interview or a team that you're trying to get on, um, the people that are running the interview or the audition, they're looking for something. They have a vision, right? Like they're looking for something. And whether or not what you are fits that mold doesn't doesn't change the value of what you are. Or it doesn't also mean that you should change what you are to become that mold always. So that was like a big lesson when I was modeling, where it's like, okay, someone might be saying I'm not right for this role. They're not saying that like I'm not right. The third type of criticism is that internal criticism. And I specifically struggle with this. I've always had really difficult PMS, like PMDD. And during that time, I tend to be overly self-critical. It really just is difficult. I feel like my internal voice goes hard during that time. But I feel like, again, questioning the source, sometimes that source can be yourself, where it's like, okay, I'm just being down to myself today, but it's okay. But I also know that like it's PMS time for me, and that just checking, like, I might be seeing this totally clearly. Or if maybe you're self-critical and it's not a hormonal thing, if you're feeling overly self-critical about your performance or the way you look, maybe you woke up and you're like, "Ugh, I just like can't figure out my hair today and I have nothing to wear." And you just kind of feel that like spiral starting, maybe stopping and thinking like, is there a situation in my life right now that I don't feel like having control over. And perhaps I'm turning then and trying to control internally, which is a
Yeah.
pattern that I've, become aware of in my own life. I'm seeking control of something outside my own scope and I can't get it. I sometimes turn to myself and, try to overly control my own circumstances. So examining the source is like the first thing that you should go to your mind when you receive criticism, whether it's from yourself, the world, a loved one, is just saying, what is the source? And is there anything else going on?
Well, I think it's actually like the perfect answer because it is part of what we teach in our Divine Confidence course when we talk about crucial conversations, and we've hosted workshops about that. And I think, this is something that we've extracted from methods that you obviously practice in your daily life and I employ in my daily life. And one of the things that I think about in those situations too that I is really impactful, Asha, is that examining the source came from your desire to be curious. Like you're a naturally very curious person. And it's rubbed off on me in that in these situations where there's anything critical, like self communication or communication with other people, approaching those dialogues with that curiosity, with that desire to examine the source instead of just radical acceptance initially, or like just like you hear something and you're like, wow, I'm telling myself I look like crap today, so I look like crap today, which is not true. But if you, like you said, use that curiosity and look at, why that's happening or who's telling yourself that, that's where you really start to break away from that. And I think it's really powerful. And all this to say, you inspire me to do this in my daily life too. So we really are walking the talk and practicing.
Well, here's another question, and these questions are so good, and I just want to thank you guys for submitting them. I think Keisha could take this one. How could I be confident when I'm trying something new and I'm scared of failing? I really want to try new things, but I'm so scared of failing or embarrassing myself. How can I build the confidence to get out of my comfort zone?
This is actually a really interesting question because I think about myself as a kid, and a lot of our listeners probably know I'm a very creative person. I was always the kid with like 1,000 hobbies. And I think that there are certain things that I'm naturally adept at, like with everyone else. You're naturally a beautiful dancer. I naturally am really good with my hands and with creativity. So a lot of times as a kid, I would pick things up very quickly, especially if it was creative. So like drawing or origami or building things and so in those situations, I got a lot of praise. I felt really good about myself because I'm like, wow, this is something new and I'm really good at it the first time I'm doing it. But what happened was like, then there would be other things like riding a bike or like doing certain sports, like using my body to do different things. Volleyball, we're really bad at it. And so I get into these situations where I started to tell myself, I don't think I'm going to be good at that. So I'm not even going to try. And there was a period of my life where I just wouldn't try things that I assumed I wouldn't be good at. It was thankfully short lived because I'm a very stubborn person. And I think there's something in me that says, I am going to get better at it. And that stubbornness, that internal voice is what's driven me to create the confidence around trying new things. Now, I understand everybody has different ways of approaching things. I'm just sharing my experience because I'm sure other people can relate to being really good at something, but then feeling super apprehensive about trying something new. And to reverse that pattern of not wanting to try something new was one part like blind stubbornness, like, I don't want to be bad at this, so I'm going to keep practicing it. But it's also just telling yourself, if I don't work at something, I'm not going to be better at it. There are things that I am naturally good at, and some things that I probably will look really silly doing. I'm 5 feet tall. I am terrible at volleyball. I've never gotten better at it. But I've learned to change the inner dialogue from I'm going to fail and be bad at it, and that's the forever answer, to if I work hard at it, if I do it a little bit every day, then I'm sure I will get better at it. And that's not a failure. That's actually a huge success because it's reinforcing the idea that we're all capable human beings. And the areas in our life where we're really successful at something, I bet you anything, if you sit down and just catalog like the things that you're really good at or the things that you really feel confident at doing, the things that you have a handle at, they're directly related to the time spent on those activities. So I don't ever play volleyball and I'm still really bad at it. But I do practice other things like skateboarding and I've gotten much better. Or, scuba diving, I had to learn how to do being a mom, I have to practice that every day. And so it's just different things. I remember like spending like an hour in bed one night learning how to snap my fingers, which I didn't know how to do initially. But after an hour, I got a lot closer to knowing how to snap my fingers. And so
What I would have
these,
given to be a fly on the wall.
oh my God, my fingers were, I was probably like 7 or 8 years old. My fingers were raw the next morning, but I learned how to do it. And now, like, Jude's like learning how to do the movement of snapping his fingers, and he doesn't know how to do it, but it's a really like fun reminder of like these little examples of times where like you don't know how to do something, you're scared of trying it, you might fail, you might look silly. But going back to like speaking up in a classroom, trying something new is really inspiring for other people because I think, similarly, if I were to try something in front of somebody else who also didn't know how to do it and they could see like it's okay to look silly, it's okay to fail, it's okay to try new things together, that's inspiring. It's inspiring for yourself, it's inspiring for the people that you're doing things with. And then it becomes fun to try new things because then you're like, hey, this is really low stakes. I've never done this before, so why not? I'm probably going to be bad at it, but like, why not try?
That's such a good point that I think that like beginner's energy can actually be so fun because it's like once you acknowledge like I'm a beginner, like this is my first time doing something, you can put a smile on your face and like it of course I'm gonna be bad the first time. I mean, if I'm not, that's crazy and cool, but like I'm probably gonna
Yeah.
be bad. It's the first time, so I might as well enjoy it and have fun and just laugh at myself a little bit because like wow, this is something new for me. We
Mhm.
were at a wedding yesterday, last evening, and I love weddings because A, I think it's just a general sense of joy and love, which
We love love.
we love, love. But I love watching people dance at weddings, and I love to dance at weddings. And my sister and I have always loved this. Our whole family just really loves to dance at big family events. Um, but my sister said something so wise one time. She's like, "You never look stupid when you're having fun."
Yes.
I mean, I think that there's caveats to that, like if you're having fun at someone's expense or like taking substances to an excess or something. But like my example of that is like someone dancing at a wedding, even if they have the kookiest moves or sliding all over the dance floor and stuff, if they got a smile on their face and they're having a good time, that's confidence. That's like everybody loves it. And then it inspires other people to try things and experiment and have fun. And it's like, that's like, think of it trying a new thing like dancing at a wedding. If you're going to smile while you're trying it for the first time, you're going to make other people have a great time. You're going to have a great time. And over time, you're going to get better at it. If you spend enough hours practicing it, learning it, embracing the growth. My mom reminds me of that a lot. Like I am definitely a person that wants to grow quickly and get really good at something as soon as possible
Mhm.
once I commit to wanting it. But my own mom has had to remind me. She's like, "Well, how long have you spent on that?" And it gives you a sense of, it could give you guilt about not spending enough time on something yet, but it could also give you agency where it's like, well, the reason I'm not good at that is because I haven't dedicated time to it. I've chosen to dedicate time to these things, and I'm probably quite good at them. If you really look at a couple areas of your life where you dedicated a lot of time, for instance, Kishia and I now this is our 120th episode. And when we first
So
started interviewing people, we were working on a script, we wanted to edit everything. And now, just from the sheer quantity of interviews that we've done, I think both of us can look in the mirror and be like, you know, I think, and we've been given the feedback that I think we're pretty good interviewers because we've spent a lot of time. So take that, the idea that you're choosing to spend your time in certain areas. And if you've chosen not to spend time on a certain thing, it's okay for you to not be good at it.
Mhm.
That's logic.
Yeah. In a lot of ways, I think failure should be the goal because I think
Totally.
that means that you're trying. You're consistently trying. You haven't given up. And that's really inspiring. This is a great question. We wanted to make sure to get this one into because this is really where we're at right now as a society. But one listener asked, how can I stop comparing myself to other girls at school or on social media? I always find myself comparing my looks, grades, and social life to other girls, and it makes me feel like I'm not good enough. How can I break this habit and feel more confident in who I am?
I love this question because I feel like, I mean, it doesn't just apply to our teen girls. I have
It doesn't,
I've been in
yeah,
a situation where I'm like, gosh, like why am I like so aware of what everybody else is doing? You know, and I think rather than getting down on yourself for like, oh, I'm spending too much time on social media, or like, oh, like I'm just comparing myself all the time, rather than getting down on yourself or giving yourself shame for that comparison, which we all know comparison is the thief of joy, maybe just taking it as a symptom or a sign that if you're seeking information and feedback in what other people are doing, perhaps you haven't spent enough time doing the work with yourself to really understand what you stand for, what you love, what your tools are that help you really plug into yourself, your goals, your plan to execute your goals, your tools for reflection. Um, you know, that if you're finding yourself doing a lot of this comparison, it's just a sign that it's like, all right, we should schedule an hour, 15 minutes, 5 minutes on a walk to dig into what's going on here. Um, when we started this company, it was during a time when like social media influencing and stuff was like really taking off and people were making careers out of this. And um, you know, it's just everywhere. Like everybody had a profile. And then also, you know, when we it's not even just social media. It's like when you're entering the job market and people are like, what's your personal brand? What does your resume say? What's your elevator pitch? You know, when you're given an opportunity, what are you going to say? Like, how does everybody else know you? And we're not saying that you shouldn't do these things. You have to do these things. We have to put out an image of ourselves to the world. This is just kind of the world of information that we live in. But what we have returned to and what we have decided on our mission as a company being is that prior to doing that work of creating your own personal brand or whatever, we're kind of creating an antidote to the pressure of that element of our daily lives. We want not for you when you're at Meet Bridget, when if you're signed up for our membership where you're plugging into our weekly calls or accessing our courses or behind the scenes content, we want you to be rather than creating this dissociated avatar of a profile of what you want other people to see you as, we want you to be plugging into what you know to be true about yourself. You know, like when you sit with yourself and ask, who am I? We want you to have an abundance of answers and strong things that you can establish and build and work on and know so that when life's river gets crazy and tumultuous, you have the exact tools to plug back into those elements of yourself, your values, what's important to you, your biggest goals, and then also your tools to get back on track and return to yourself when you need to.
yeah, an anchor and a compass. You know, this work is so gratifying for so many reasons, but I also think it's so universal. And being able to create that unshakable foundation, and it's different for everyone. My inner compass is only mine. It's not my husband's, it's not my siblings or my friends. It's not the same as Asha's. It's very, very personal. And so I think that we're so grateful to be here as your coaches, as the guides, as the ladies that you've entrusted to bring in all of the information we've learned and bequeath it to you to use to strengthen your own inner compass. It really is gratifying work, and I think it's strengthened my self-confidence, it's strengthened my resilience, it's reinforced the things that I deeply believe in, and I feel really confident about what I know to be true in my world. And that doesn't mean that like I can't shift or grow or adapt still. It means that I can do all of those things with my own internal compass. And I feel like Asha, you can say the same, and it's this shared goal and this shared passion for being able to do that and share these learnings that really keeps this going. It keeps us very consistent even when our rivers are moving at swift paces or they diverge, as sometimes they do. Sometimes Asha's got like a ton of stuff going on. I've got a ton of stuff going on. But, like with this season, we've been able to reconnect with each other and say, like, okay, let's establish these goalposts, these mile markers that we're going to stay committed to and hit, so that even if things are going crazy and my river's over here and yours is there, we're going to be able to come back together at these mile markers and just make sure we're checking in with each other, checking in with our community, and keeping afloat and navigating together.
Yes. And what I feel like it's be so nice to close on is that, everybody wants to know, like, okay, well, what is the end goal? Like, what do I walk away with if I'm at the end of this season, or if I have been, doing one-on-one coaching with Asha and Kashia, or have joined the membership? Like, how am I going to be different from this point where I feel like I'm just starting this inner work of, really knowing what is true of myself and what I want? What is the end game? And what we will tell you is that once you do this work, you'll notice a level of resilience and stability when you're tested in those hard times. When you've taken the time first to check in and build your toolkit, the resilience will show in hard times. Second, you'll have specific applications of confidence too. It's not just, I feel like when we see a confident person, sometimes, or a confident person, we look at them and we're like, gosh, they just have this star quality, this je ne sais quoi, like something about them is just confidence. And that can seem kind of like sparkly and like a cloud just floating above people. What we're here to tell you is that there is a methodology. Once you plug into your values, we can walk you through really applying confidence. So it's not just, are you confident? You can take a specific goal. Like, I want to be more confident on the soccer field, or I want to be confident when I'm going out for jobs as I finish college. Whatever it is, taking your confidence and then applying it in a methodology is something that we are here to show you how to do. Or really show you that you already know how to do. And then finally is just giving you tools for reflecting and adapting. Like, how do you integrate feedback when it comes back to you? Because it's not just, oh, I'm going to be confident about something and then I go out and then I win. It's, I'm going to be confident about trying something or putting together my thesis for what I think will happen or what I should try or do. And then the world gives you information. And how do you take that information, reintegrate it, reflect on it, and then adapt and keep moving towards that central goal that you have? So all of those things are really results that, maybe are hard to quantify sometimes, but we guarantee you'll feel, um, you know, a real difference in your inner systems, those internal systems that we all are using, whether or not we're mindful of them.
I can't believe that this is where we are. We're ending season 4 on such a humbling and beautiful note, and it's been another really great one. We can't express how truly grateful and empowered and just inspired by this community both of us are. It's been a really great season. It's jam packed. These episodes, I mean, we're going to continue to record and get things banked for season 5 for you guys. But we also have so many other exciting things coming down the pipeline, including more in person events, including the launch of our YouTube channel. So you'll be able to sit in on our interviews and see behind the
Yeah.
scenes. And we're also working on developing a subscription model for all of you so that, our subscribers can get some more insight into what we do. They'll get a peek behind the curtain, maybe some access to live interviews, and so much more. I mean, we're consistently working on bringing you everything that we've learned and just making this a really wonderful, safe, useful tool for anyone and everyone looking for that inspiration and community, and a way to develop and hone in on that self-confidence.
And it's so fun because it's like so our YouTube channel, we're not just starting from scratch. We're taking all of our past interviews, and we're getting them up for you guys. So you can, if you like watching them there, we actually have video from past episodes that we hadn't released prior. Now it's going to be released. So you could literally go back and, if there was an episode that you loved and you're like, oh, it'd be really fun to like see them having that conversation
Mm-hmm.
on screens. Now you'll be able to do that. So
Oh,
that launch will be really fun. I feel like we forget to share this feature sometimes, but on our new website, even you go to the list of episodes, we have worked really hard with a web designer, Ari Witt. You can also listen to her interview. She helped us create this searchable library. It is our goal and vision that young women feel access, connection, and relatable information about different career paths and life paths. So you can go to our podcast tab on our website and search by name, career path, or even topics of different episodes. So if you're like, okay, I want to listen to anyone that's talked about body image, or I want to listen to anyone that's in the fashion industry or in the tech industry, whatever it is, that you can search by different career paths, which is so fun. Even if you're not familiar with the person, you can dive in and see if you relate to that person and their path. And maybe if you do, you'll learn something about, your own path forward, or a little bit of inspiration that will make you feel so alone. So thank you to all of our amazing guests this season. We can't wait to share. We have some more amazing guests that are already lined up and ready for next season. And thank you, as always, to you, our listener, on the other end of these microphones. We are honored to be part of your lives, whether you're going on a walk and taking a moment for yourself, cleaning your house, doing your homework, getting your exercise in. The real estate of what goes into your ears is valuable, and we feel honored to be part of your community. So thank you. Feel forth with confidence.
thank you so much. We'll see you next season, same time, same place.